Today we're going to be learning how to paint this Be Happy truck back design. It is super easy, perfect for a beginner if you've never painted anything before, and I'm going to show you how to do it using one of our printable templates. You can print this off on your home printer. I'm going to tape it together and then we're going to trace it onto our wood piece. Now, I cut this wood piece using a jigsaw. You could also use a scroll saw, or if you're not very handy with power tools, you could trace this template right onto a wooden round that you purchased maybe at Hobby Lobby or Michael's or even the Dollar Tree. So let's get started. You're going to begin by printing this out on your home printer. You're going to cut off any excess white space. I had already resized this template to fit on my project perfectly. So if you are fitting it onto a smaller circle, like let's say a 16-inch wooden round, you're going to take the 20-inch template that you download, do 16 divided by 20. That will give you a percentage. That percentage you're going to input into your printer's scale settings to print it out at a smaller scale. Okay, once you've got it all taped together, I used shipping tape for mine. You're ready to trace it onto your wood. You're just going to need a piece of graphite paper to trace it on the wood, and then we're going to begin painting. So gather your supplies and then we'll get started. Okay, so let's begin. I have my template that is printed out. You can get this on our website. It comes ready to print on 4 sheets of paper. So this is technically 4 sheets of paper that have been cut and taped together. It's shiny because I used shipping tape to secure it. So you pretty much just assemble it like a puzzle and then cut out around to remove all the excess paper. And then you can trace it on your wood and you can cut out your piece of wood using a jigsaw or a scroll saw. This one was cut out with a jigsaw. I'm just gonna be honest here and show you that you're gonna probably, depending on the kind of wood you have some splintering, especially if your jigsaw blade's a little dull, but don't worry, paint's gonna cover all of that. Just give it a nice little sanding so that you don't have any splinters. And then come to your craft room or wherever you're gonna paint and sit down with your template. You're also gonna need a piece of graphite paper. This is an 18-inch piece of graphite paper, and we're gonna use this to trace our design on the wood. So we've already traced the outer outline, which is what we cut. So now we're just gonna feel underneath for the truck to line everything up. And once you have it all lined up, we're gonna start tracing the design onto the wood. To trace this design on the wood, you can either use a ballpoint pen or a pencil. I prefer a ballpoint pen. I think it glides much nicer. And we're just gonna start up at the top and work our way down, tracing the entire design. And don't worry about tracing those words. We'll add them later. It'll just be easier to trace them on top of the paint. I'm just gonna fold this up, put it out of the way. Now you can go back, and if you see that you missed any lines, you can correct them. Now we've got our entire design on the wood. Once you have all your lines on there, you're ready to start painting. Now, if you feel like you're worried that you're going to paint over an area and mess up your lines, you can trace these lines with a Sharpie to make sure you can see them better. If you're painting with kids, that's really a smart way to make sure that they can still see their lines even after they begin painting. But we're going to start with a turquoise color because I like to block in all of the colors of my truck first, the body of the truck. And so I'm using Decor Americana Sea Breeze as my truck color. You can change this truck to be any color you like. So if you want a red truck, you can do red. You could do blue, pink, purple, whatever color truck you want. The only color I wouldn't recommend is probably orange or yellow because that's going to be the color sort of our honeycomb and our beehive. So you want to choose a color that's going to contrast well with that. So Sea Breeze is my color of choice. And I'm just going to start up at the top and start painting in the areas that are around the beehive. So I'm going around those lines. I did start with a large flat tip brush. This one is about a little over a 1/2 inch wide. If you're struggling with what brushes to use, we have an entire set of paint brushes that are perfect for projects like this in our shop. And so if you follow a lot of my videos, it'll be really handy to know exactly which brush I have if you have this brush set, and you can find it at shopdoorhangers.com. So just trace around that entire little honeycomb and then just fill in the whole area. If your wood has some splinters like mine does, make sure and get down in those little splintered areas with the paint. If you're not comfortable cutting your own wood blanks yet, you can get this design in our shop already cut out, and it's going to actually eliminate this whole step of tracing this design onto the wood for you. So if you just want to sit down and paint, you don't want to worry about the manual side of cutting things out, you can get this design already cut out and ready to paint in our shop. Okay. Okay, this area here is all going to be window. And we've got our bumblebee, our beehive, and our honeycomb. So we're going to jump down here and paint in the area that's at the bottom of the truck. If you feel like for any reason your paint's not going on smoothly, you can get a little bit of water on your brush and that will help your paint go on a little bit more smoothly. Sometimes I have that trouble if my paint has been sitting for a while and gets nice and thick. A little bit of water will help loosen it up. Now right there, I painted over that line. So if you're worried about painting over that line and not being able to see it, trace that line with a Sharpie and you should still be able to see it through your paint. Or you can always realign your template later and trace that line back on after it's painted. Sometimes I like to put my brush up on it, what I call its tippy toes, like I just did, and line something so that kind of helps me go along that line to kind of create that line so that I know I'm not going to get it all over my bumper and my tires. Some paint colors that you use probably will require a couple of coats. So depending on the color you're using, you might need to do more than one coat. This Sea Breeze is covering pretty good. I don't know if we're going to have to do 2 coats yet, but we'll see. Okay, if you want to get a little extra fancy, you can add just a little bit of shading in on your truck. I'm taking the color called Laguna. It is quite a contrast to this Sea Breeze. So I'm actually going to mix a tiny amount with the Sea Breeze that I have to kind of create an in-between color because I wanted something just a little darker than the Sea Breeze, but not super dark. So now that I've got that mixed together, I'm going to grab an angle tip brush. I'm going to get some water on it and then dab it on a paper towel, smooth my bristles out, and then I'm just going to pick up a little bit of this on the top corner of my brush. So just the corner, and we're going to go around the outer edges of the truck with this color. If you find that the color's not blending well, spritz your door hanger with a little bit of water and that will help this blend, or paint on top of wet paint. So if your paint underneath is wet, sometimes that helps this color to kind of just blend in a little better. And just keep that color to that outer edge and see how that created a nice little shadow. Let's do the same thing to the other side. Going over here and putting it around the outer edge of our truck. I'm gonna spritz mine because my paint is drying fast. If at any point got too much, you can go back and get your original color and kind of just blend it to kind of soften it up a little bit. Or you can rinse your brush out and just get a wet brush and kind of go over it just a little with a damp brush with no paint on it, and it erases it just a little. Let's do a little bit underneath the top edge of the truck here. So I'm loading the corner of my brush up again, and I'm just going to go along this top edge, and this just creates a little bit of a shadow, gives the truck a little bit more dimension so it doesn't look so flat. Now, the lines that we kind of lost right here, let's add those back with our shadow. So I'm just putting that color in to create like a little shadow right here. We'll go back and accentuate those a little bit more with like a paint pen or something later to kind of make them stand out a little bit more. But for right now, it's just a subtle line in the truck bed. We can do a little bit around our the top here of our truck in the corners. Add a little bit of that darker teal and a little bit on our mirrors, just around the edges. You can be kind of messy with this, especially if you've mixed your teal together to create sort of a softer teal. It's not going to be so bold when you go to do those lines. I'm going to do a little along the bottom here as well. See how all of that created a little bit of dimension with our truck. Okay, before we continue to paint anything else on this, I want to just say, if you're struggling right now and you feel like your paint maybe didn't cover as well, it's just paint. You can always paint over it again, but I don't want you to obsess about this initial like background coat, if you will, because we're going to put so much more on this and add details, and it's just going to come to life the more we paint. So don't obsess over little imperfections or things that you might feel that are wrong with it. Let's just keep painting and trust the process. Okay, let's move on to painting the gray areas of our truck. For me, this is going to be the inside of the window behind all of the elements like the beehive, the honeycomb, and the bee. So it'll be everything behind that area, the insides of the windows, kind of as a reflection, and the gray part of our bumper. So I'm using Gray Sky, which is a Decor Americana paint color, and I have moved down to a 1/2 inch wide flat tip brush because this is a smaller area that we're painting. So I'm just going to start at the top again and paint in those areas. I like to trace the area first and then fill in the middle. I might also pick up a little bit of white occasionally so that this doesn't look like such a flat color, because this is supposed to be a window, and so we don't want it to be just a flat gray. So I didn't rinse out my brush. I've still got gray on it. I just got a tiny bit of white on the corner there, and I'm just going to kind of streak that in from time to time so it's not just a flat color. So again, I'm just kind of blocking in the area that I'm going to fill in. I'm actually using my flat tip brush for this. I'm putting it up on its tippy toes. That's what I call it when I put the brush straight up and down instead of flat. And I'm just kind of using it to trace in the areas that are going to be gray. So okay if you accidentally get a little bit of this on your honeycomb or your beehive because, and you know, anytime you're doing the streakiness, it can be kind of hard to keep it just in the area you're painting. That's why we're doing this first. It's the background. So if it accidentally gets over on the honeycomb or something like that a little bit, we're going to paint over that area. It's okay. Just make sure you've got good coverage on your wood. If you don't, get some more paint and just keep streaking it on there. If you want to get a little fancy, you can take a tiny bit of black and streak black into it to kind of make it not look so flat either. And when I say tiny, I mean tiny, tiny. I got way too much of my brush just then, but I was trying to put an itty bitty bit on there just so that it kind of streaks. Oh, see, that's more than I want. Dab that off with my paper towel. Here we go. I don't want it to look like a brand new bumper. This truck's been around the block a time or two. If you get too much, just pick up some more of your gray or dab it off on the paper towel. And see how it looked really harsh at first, but if you keep kind of swiping over it, it softens it. I like the way that looks. Let's paint in our little tail lights. I'm going to use this color called Tuscan Red. It's a really pretty deep red, but any red you have will probably do well. Only need a tiny amount of it. I am going to switch brushes though, down to a small filbert tip brush. A filbert tip brush is shaped like the end of your fingertip, so it's kind of rounded. It's perfect for painting small round objects like these little lights on the truck, because you can make a nice curved shape with this type of brush. So I'm going down around one side and then going around the other side of that little circle to kind of connect them and then fill in the middle. Next, let's paint our honeycomb. And for this, I selected banana cream. You could also go with a tan if you like a tan honeycomb, but I wanted to keep the colors on this really light and whimsical. I was afraid tan would make it feel a little drab. So I went with the lighter banana cream color. It's a really creamy yellow. If you don't have banana cream, the other yellow we're going to use is cadmium yellow. It's a more bright yellow. We're going to use this on our honeycomb. You can take this color and mix it with white to create a banana cream color, which is a very creamy, buttery yellow. Now I have switched to the large filbert tip brush that I have. It's got nice round edges, so it's really great for painting this. Let me just say something real quick about the lines and things on this door hanger. These lines are there for a guide for you. So if you get outside the lines like I just did, sometimes they're just there to help guide you and help you see sort of the overall shape, because if we were just freehanding this, we might have the proportions off a little bit. But since we've got these lines on here as a guide, it makes it a little simpler to just slap down the paint and not have to worry about trying to get everything just right. So don't look at these lines as a prison that you have to stay perfectly inside the lines. Look at them more like it's just a guideline, something you can kind of use, and then you can work around them or inside of them just to kind of give you a placeholder for where these areas are on your door hanger. I don't want you to ever feel like you're shackled by these lines to have to paint perfectly inside the lines or anything like that. They're there to assist you, not hinder you. So far, all three of the colors that we have used cover really well on the first coat, so I haven't been doing second coats on anything. If you feel that you need to, go right ahead. I'm just kind of adding just a little bit more to kind of like make sure I've got good coverage. And then I'm going to take a little bit of white and kind of add some highlights on my honeycomb. So I'm picking up just a little bit of white on the tips of this brush. I haven't even rinsed it out. And I'm just going to kind of put this in, feather it in to the center areas of my honeycomb as a highlight across the middle. It just gives it a little bit of dimension. Okay, and while that dries, I'm going to switch over to a flat tip brush because this has lots of straight lines. Flat tip brushes are great for that. And I'm going to switch to the cadmium yellow color. If you don't have cadmium yellow, primary yellow is another good color. Just anything that's like a little bit more of a rich yellow. Actually, you know what? Back that up. What we need to do first, I wasn't even thinking about this. We probably need to use our banana cream color as a base coat for our honeycomb. This is not going to be the finished color that the honeycomb is, but I forgot that cadmium yellow and the brighter yellows sometimes don't give you good paint coverage on top of like your wood grain. So we wouldn't want our wood grain showing through the honeycomb. So we're just going to give it a base coat of this color, and then we'll go back over it in a moment with the more vibrant yellow. Okay, I went ahead and stopped and dried the project really quick just so that I could see how good my coverage is. I can see a tiny bit of wood grain through my honeycomb. If that bothers you, do another coat. I don't think it's going to bother me because I know that once we get the other details on there, that's going to be the least of what you notice. This area right here, I can still barely see my honeycomb lines. If you're struggling to see yours, take a pencil or something and go back in and put your honeycomb lines back down just so that you make sure you can still see them through the next coat of paint. Okay, now we're picking up the cadmium yellow and we're just going to put that down on top of the banana cream yellow that we just painted, and it's going to give us much better coverage. Okay, now that I've got that on there, I'm going to pick up a little bit of that banana cream and add a little bit of a highlight in the middle of my honeycomb. What I probably should do is mix the cadmium yellow with the banana cream to highlight the center of this little honeycomb so it doesn't look so flat, because the two colors are very high contrast. See how that just kind of made that look a little dimensional? So the lighter color is in the center. This is sort of the blend between the two yellows. While that's drying, let's jump up here and paint our little bumblebee. So I'm going to paint in his wings first. Again, going back to my little filbert tip brush for this because it makes nice rounded shapes. We're just going to paint in the middles here. So this white will take probably 2 to 3 coats to get really good coverage. Are you having fun yet? Don't be stressing over there. Take a deep breath. If you need to, take a snack break, walk away, come back and keep painting. I always tell my students, if you have a moment when you're like, this is just not turning out good, you just need to take a break. Give yourself a little bit of grace, walk away for a bit, maybe go to bed if you're up late doing this at like 2 a.m. in the morning. Go to bed, come back the next morning and start again. Okay, I'm gonna go back and get a little bit of that banana cream color, and we're gonna paint the center part of our bee with that as a base coat. I also had white on my brush, so it's got a little white blended in with it, and that's gonna be our base coat. We're gonna do the cadmium yellow on top of that for the center of our bee's body. We can hop down here and paint our little license plate while we're waiting for that to dry because it's the same color. Going back to my bumblebee's wings, we need another coat on these. On the final coat, we might streak in a little bit of gray so that they're not so flat white looking. If you're struggling with getting your paint to cover very well, stop and let it dry for a moment. Take a little bathroom break or hit it with a hairdryer. I'm using my little Heat It craft tool. It is a heat gun, and it's great for speeding up paint drying. If you're crafting and painting a lot, you'll appreciate having something like this on hand to dry your projects. Coat number 3 on our bumblebee's wings. On this coat, I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of the gray that we used on our windows and just streak that into those wings, just a tiny bit. All right, once your little bee's body is dry, we're going to coat it with the cadmium yellow on top of our base coat that we did. And we're doing this before we paint our bee black because it'll be much easier to just fix any mistakes with the black than it would be to try to paint yellow over the black if we got out of the line with the black. Okay, one coat's probably going to do it on that. Now I'm going to switch to black and paint in the head of my little bee. A little filbert tip brush will come in handy for this. I actually switched to a tiny little flat tip brush because I knew getting down here to the point of the stinger would be harder to do with a filbert tip brush. So I'm using a flat tip for this. I may go ahead and get a little bit of white on the corner of my brush just to highlight this little bee's head. It's very subtle. And I'll take the black and paint in the little body. Let's paint in our little tires on the bottom of our truck. Switch into a flat tip brush for this. Okay, now that we have our backgrounds and all of our major color blocking done, we can start by adding the final details. So that would be our lines that kind of just accentuate everything, our little details, and our wording. So you can do this in whatever order you like. I will probably do the wording first and then add the lines in the background. And I'm going to do this by putting the template back on my door hanger. I'm going to line it up. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it kind of, somewhat centered up, and we're going to put the wording on here. Now, if you are painting on a wood on an etched wood blank, you should be able to see that laser etched lettering underneath your paint. And you can just start painting. You can skip this next step. But for those who are using a template like I am, we're going to get our graphite paper back out. We're going to lay it underneath the template here and realign the bottom of our truck and the sides of our truck. And then just take our little ink pen and trace that lettering. Now, you can do this one of two ways. You can go down the outside of each part of the letter and actually give yourself an outline to fill in, or you can trace right down the center of the letter if you feel confident in making that look exactly like this lettering, just by making the letters look a little thicker. I'm going to go down the outside of each letter so that you can really see how this will look, because I feel like for most people, this is what they're going to do. Once you're done tracing, lift your template back up. Now you have your words on the design, and we're going to start painting inside the lines. You can use a paint pen if you like. I choose to use a paintbrush and just use a filbert tip brush or a round tip brush. And we're just going to paint inside the lines of these letters. If you need to, you can do like this and do the thicker parts with one brush and then use another brush to do the thinner parts. I'll show you two different ways. So I'll do B with swapping out brushes. And now I'm going to switch to a round tip brush, which has a pointed tip to do the parts that are a little more curved. If you're not very experienced with doing letters with a paint brush, you could just use a paint pen. I would recommend a 5mm tip paint pen for this. I prefer the water-based paint markers like Artistro or here's another brand called Posca. I'll be using those in just a moment to add other details to this little truck. Here's another method using same brush. This is our round tip brush, and I'm just going to push down and apply more pressure to do the wide areas. So I'm letting those bristles spread out, and I'm pulling down until I get to the bottom of the letter and then lifting up. And then I can use the tip of that brush to kind of clean it up if I need to. Okay, for the major details on this door hanger, I'm going to be using a 5mm Posca paint pen. This is known as like a medium tip. So no matter what brand you're working with, 5mm is about what we're going for here. It's got a bullet tip on the end. You're going to want to prime this and make sure it's working. I'll just do it on my little template here. Push. Oh, and if you get a blob of paint like that, that is not what you want. So you may have to work out some of the excess of it if it's kind of dripping on your project. You don't want that. Once you've got it all cleaned out, now we're just going to add some little details to we'll just start kind of up here at the top with our little bumblebee's wings. Just adding some little whimsical details. I'm going to trace the outline of my bumblebee's body, trace the little window and the side mirror. And this doesn't have to be perfectly traced. Like you can just kind of doodle it on there. Sometimes that's what I do. Now I'm going to take and trace out my honeycomb. I can still see my graphite lines even through like 3 layers of yellow paint here, so hopefully you can too. Look how this really just brings the whole design to life. So if up until now you've been like, oh, I don't like how this looks, I'm just not pleased with it, hopefully after you get these lines on here, you really start to enjoy the way it looks. Okay, I'm gonna do a line across the bottom of my truck here, but I'm gonna start on the edge of this little thing right here and kind of do like that, and then I'm gonna bring a straight line kind of coming across and then curve it over the edge of this side and then down. Again, remember the little area we shaded right here? Add a little curved line there to accentuate that. Let's do a line along the bumper. And you just little whimsical details. You don't have to get them perfect. You could put whatever you want on this little license plate. You might even draw another B down here, or you could put the year or your name or whatever you want to put. I want to do a little bit around these little tail lights. And then once you've got that done, I'm going to switch to a fine tip white paint pen, and I wanted to give my little bee a face. So I'm just going to draw some little eyes on here and kind of like a little smirk smile. So I'm going to do it with white first, and then I might go back and add a little bit of a black dot to give it more personality. We can also take our white and add some little details, accent on our tail lights, do some little designs on our tires, give them a little bit of a shape, and we can even add just a little highlight like on our honeycomb. So I'm just kind of just doing one in the top left and along the top of that honeycomb, kind of make it look like it's glowing. Maybe a little bit on our hive. Sometimes I like to do a little wiggle ziggle and be like a little zigzag. Looks a little bit more whimsical that way. These are all just subtle little details that really do add a lot when you're finished. I hope you guys enjoyed painting this little Be Happy truck with me. You can find the template to this project in our shop at shopdoorhangers.com, or you can get the wood like in 5 different sizes. So you could do a little bitty one of these for your tiered tray or whatever cute little project you want to do, or you could do a big door hanger like I'm doing to hang on your front door. Whatever it may be, I hope you enjoy the season with bumblebees. I feel like bees and beehives are really popular this year. So go and paint one of these, and if you can, even maybe try to sell one.